Hello everyone, welcome to the 80 literary and jury charge portion of the 80 class. We're going to start off with some jury charge. I'm going to give you a word list, okay? So you're going to hear attorney, which is T-O-R-N. In this case is N-I-K. In the case, N-E-K. Juror, J-A-O-R. Of course is final F-K. Let's see, instruct, S-T-R-U-K-T, evidence, E-F-D, instructions, just, you're going to write that as S-T-R-U-B-G-S, come back for final Z if it's plural, discussions, S-K-U-B-G-S, let's see here, you're going to hear bailiff, which is B-L-I-F, bliff, outside, O-Z, verdict, V-E-R-D, and that's about it for this one. So I'm going to read this at 80. Okay, here we go. Members of the jury, you and I, are not like the attorneys. We must remain disinterested if pure right is to succeed. Of course, the plaintiff and the defendant are interested. But as a juror, you should only concern yourself with the facts in the case. I will now explain to you what the law is in this case. I will explain what is legal and what is not legal in relation to the evidence in this case. I will not instruct you as to the decision you should reach, because it is your duty to reach your own conclusions about the facts in the case, regardless of what you think my opinion may be. After all the evidence has been presented to you, and after the court has read the instructions to the jury, which is the law to be applied to the facts, the attorneys for both sides make their arguments to you. These so-called arguments are really discussions of evidence as seen from each party's point of view. These discussions are important to you because in them the attorneys sum up the main points for their side. They may help you recall many details in the testimony that might have left your memory. It is here that the attorneys effect their main service to the juror by organizing the evidence into a blended picture, fitting all the parts into a connected story. No longer is the case a confused number of facts. Next, or naturally, each attorney, being a defender, presents the side most favorable to his client. Remember that these opening and closing arguments of the attorneys are not evidence. You must disregard any statement which you do not think was proved by the evidence, and always disregard any attorney's account about the law of the case if it was not included in the court's instructions. Now that you are ready to retire to the jury room for your deliberation, it is more important than ever that you remain unbiased. This is why, from now until a decision is reached, jurors must always remain together. Most of the time, this will be in the jury room. Naturally, restrictions must be enforced. During deliberations, bailiffs will be in charge of the jury. Both male and female bailiffs are on hand to assist you in every possible way. The bailiff is not only your escort, but when you are in your deliberation, he or she is always just outside the jury room to handle any wants you might have. At mealtimes, he takes the jurors as a group to and from the eating place. During all meals, as well as other times, you must not talk with any outsider. And, of course, you cannot read newspapers, books, magazines, listen to the radio, television, or read anything online. After you retire to the jury room to consider your verdict, you should, or how should you proceed? As you choose, of course, but your decision may be made less difficult if you have a wise plan to follow. A foreperson must be selected. Your choice is an important one. The foreperson should give every juror an equal chance to express their views. He or she must guide the deliberation so that it does not stray and becomes involved in general statements. The deliberation is not a place for confused emotions, but a place for a calm reviewing of facts. As a juror, you must enter into the discussion with an open mind and freely exchange your opinions with the others. Do not hesitate to change your original views if, through your deliberations, you become convinced your views were incorrect. All right. I have an article here. It's called Me Go Now. Before you give your boss a piece of your mind, make sure you can spare it. kind of a funny article. All right, so I will read this at 80. Here we go. In the advertising agency where I work, the world has long since gone around that I am vaguely daffy. It's true that I become involved in impossible situations and rarely say what I mean. Things have worsened steadily since Glenn Gordon came in as creative head of our agency. The first time Glenn ever saw me was the day Gregory Peck toured our offices, gathering background for an acting role. At the moment, I was in the art department waiting for an artist friend to return from lunch. Sitting at a drawing board, idly drawing rectangles, I suddenly looked up to see Glenn Gordon, Gregory Peck, and other important folk filing in. Sizing up the situation quickly, I did what I maintain was the right thing. Glenn Gordon was there to show Mr. Peck artists. I became one. I drew rectangles furiously. This is what we call the bull pen, Glenn said. Here our rough ideas are rendered into finished layouts to show clients. He smiled at the artists in the bullpen. He smiled at me. Gregory Peck smiled at me. I smiled back. As soon as they left, I decided not to wait around for the artist any longer. I texted for him to call me, took a shortcut to my office, and started writing up a draft from my computer. Shadows fell across my opaque glass cubicle. Voices murmured. I looked up, appalled. There were Glenn Gordon, Gregory Peck, and the others. This is a typical copywriter's office, Glenn began. Here, basic copy is... He stared at me, and his mouth hung open, caught on a syllable. I smiled at him. I smiled at Peck. The group moved on, and I returned to my work, but my heart wasn't in it. I knew with a dread of certainty that Glenn and I would meet again. A week later, a secretary had her purse stolen, presuming it taken by a transient messenger and hoping at least to recover the bag. She asked me to search the trash can in the men's room. I went in and began looking through the big basket. Glenn Gordon entered. it didn't occur to me that he had no idea why I was examining crumpled paper towels in the lavatory of $100 million advertising agency. I saw it only as a good time to explain the Peck incident. I rose up from the basket and said, "About Gregory Peck, I wasn't twins the other day. I was in the art department to see about cutting up some horses. It didn't come out right, as usual, but I had been there that day to get some photos of horses trimmed and mounted." Glenn backed away slowly, nodding at me. After that, things went smoothly until the day we came face to face in the production department. Glenn motioned me to a chair. Obviously, he needed to know more about me, and wonderfully enough, I was equal to the occasion. We chatted easily about a variety of things. As we talked, Glenn became visibly relieved. I decided to quit while I was ahead. I stood up quickly and leaned toward Glenn to say goodbye. A simple "so long" or "nice talking with you" would have sufficed. But as I searched for the appropriate farewell, my mind gave way completely. No words came. Glenn, having no inkling that I meant to leave, and unable to understand why I was suddenly towering over him silently, froze like a frightened rabbit. My mouth began to move wordlessly. Finally, I managed to speak. "Me go now," I said hoarsely, and walked away. Why I said that had an explanation, but it's the kind that never can be given without adding to the confusion. I had been reading about Robert Benchley, once attending a bad play involving a character who spoke broken English. Benchley had said, "Me go," and left the theater. The phrase stuck in my subconscious until it tumbled out to help do me in. Soon there was another incident. The time, 4:20 p.m. of a hectic day. I had just escaped from a meeting and was headed for the 10th floor and the sanctuary of my own office. The elevator door opened, and there, naturally, was Glenn Gordon. He smiled resolutely and said, "Hi there, how are you?" I stepped aboard and answered, "Hi, just getting back from lunch?" If you were to convene all the authors of all the articles on how to succeed in business and ask them to select the phrase not to be uttered to the boss at 4:20 in the afternoon, just getting back from lunch, would score victory by acclamation. Do believe me, that isn't what I meant to say. Exactly what I meant to say, I do not know. That was Tuesday. Wednesday was worse. I took a late lunch and celebrated a crisp winter day in Manhattan by buying my fiancé a huge stuffed poodle. On my way back, I saw a pair of earrings I thought she would like and bought those too. When I returned to my desk, I had a clever idea. I decided to put the earrings on the dog's ears and thus give both presents an original touch. I unwrapped the big poodle and hoisted it up onto my desk. Carefully, I began fastening a silver bell-shaped earring to a floppy ear. Fate was tempted. Fate responded. As I bent to my task, Glenn Gordon came down the aisle and glanced in my office. Everywhere about me, dedicated copywriters were hard at work. I was putting earrings on a stuffed poodle. I grinned and said, "Dog." He stared, opened his mouth to speak, and then rushed away. I have not seen him since then. I start each day with trepidation, waiting for a pink slip to flutter in. What will I say then? Me go now, I guess. Kind of sounds like he puts himself in awkward situations with the things that he says. So that concludes our literary and drill portion of the 80 class.